Claire Donovan, a single mother and overworked nurse, thought she'd found salvation in the cheap apartment at 33 Blackwood Lane, a crumbling 1920s building with stained wallpaper that smelled faintly of mildew and something sweet, like rotting fruit. The moment they stepped inside, her 6-year-old daughter Mia, usually shy and withdrawn, became fixated on a smooth, water-damaged patch of wall in her new bedroom, running her fingers over it like it was calling to her. The super, an elderly man named Mr. Veles, with a milky white left eye, gave them only one rule: don't let her draw on the walls. But that first night, as Claire lay exhausted in bed, she heard the unmistakable sound of chalk scraping against plaster. And when she crept into Mia's room, she found her daughter asleep, her fingers stained with dust, a perfectly drawn door sketched onto the wall, complete with a smudged black knob that looked like it had been touched by greasy, eager fingers. Chapter 2. The First Night Visitor. 3 nights later, Claire woke to the sound of whispering. She found Mia standing in front of the chalk door, her tiny hand pressed against it as if listening, her voice a hollow murmur. "He says I can come play." Claire erased the drawing, scrubbing until the wall was bare. But the next morning, the door was back, this time with small, child-sized handprints pushing outward from the other side. The chalk smeared like something had tried to claw its way through. Desperate, Claire covered the wall with a bookshelf, but Mia only laughed and said, "That won't stop him. He walks through all the doors." That night, Claire jolted awake to 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Not on the apartment door, but from inside Mia's wall, each one shaking the bookshelf like something was testing its strength. Chapter 3. The History of 33 Blackwood. Claire dug into the building's past and uncovered a nightmare. In the 1950s, it had been the Blackwood Home for Lost Children, an orphanage run by a man named Luther Veles, who believed in disciplinary education. Records showed that 17 children had vanished under his care before a fire burned half the building down. But no bodies were ever found. A faded newspaper clipping quoted a traumatized survivor. The tall teacher took them into the walls. He said they were going to his special classroom. When Claire confronted Mr. Veles, he smiled, a slow, knowing grin, and said, "Children always go where they're needed most." That night, Mia sleepwalked again, this time drawing a row of stick figures at a desk, their mouths open in silent screams above the words, "We did our lessons." Chapter 4. The Rules. Mia's drawings grew more detailed and more disturbing. She sketched a towering figure with elongated limbs and a face like a smudged-out photograph, labeled "The Teacher." Beneath it, in shaky child's handwriting, was a list. 1. Don't open the chalk door. 2. Don't answer his questions. 3. Don't look at his face. When Claire asked where she'd learned these rules, Mia blinked slowly and replied, "He taught me." That evening, Claire found a pile of rotting candy on Mia's pillow, the same peppermints mentioned in the orphanage records as rewards for good behavior. She threw them away, but the next morning, they were back, arranged in a perfect pyramid, with one unwrapped and bitten in half, teeth marks too large to be Mia's. Chapter 5. The Offering. The knocking grew louder, now accompanied by the sound of dragging footsteps and the faint squeak of chalk on a blackboard. Mia began sleep-eating, her jaw moving mechanically as she chewed nothing, her breath smelling sickly sweet. Claire woke to find her daughter's arms covered in faint red lines, like she'd been gripped too hard by invisible hands. Desperate, she set up a camera in Mia's room, and the footage showed Mia sitting up in bed, staring at the wall, while a second warped voice whispered lessons in long-dead arithmetic. The worst part? Mia was answering correctly, in languages she'd never learned. Chapter 6. The Voice in the Walls. Claire heard her own voice calling Mia one night, except she hadn't spoken. When she burst into Mia's room, her daughter was standing with her ear pressed to the chalk door, nodding along to something Claire couldn't hear. "He says you were a bad student," Mia murmured. "He says you never listen." The next day, Mia drew a banquet table with empty chairs and a single place setting, labeled "For the New Girl." That night, the chalk door creaked open, just a crack, revealing a long hallway lined with tiny desks, their surfaces scratched with desperate fingernail marks. At the far end, something tall and crooked shuffled forward, its joints popping like dry twigs. Chapter 7: The Invitation. Mia began sleepwalking toward the door every night, her small hands pushing against it like she was trying to get in. Claire barricaded it with furniture, but each morning, the barricade was moved aside, not broken, but carefully dismantled, like someone had patiently taken it apart. Mia's drawings now showed a stick-figure girl sitting at a desk, her eyes X'd out, while the tall teacher loomed behind her, his chalky fingers stretching toward her neck. One sketch was labeled in Mia's handwriting, "I have to go to class now." Claire, hysterical, tried to scrub the door away, but the chalk wouldn't fade, as if it had seeped into the wall itself. Chapter 8: The Truth About Mr. Veles. Claire broke into the super's office and found a ledger from 1952, the year of the fire. Inside were daily notes in looping cursive. Thomas wouldn't stop crying. Lesson administered. Marion forgot her sums, sent to the quiet room. The last entry read, "They're hiding in the walls now. Good, they'll learn better there." Underneath was a photo of Luther Veles, tall, thin, with one milky eye, standing proudly in front of the orphanage. The sane man who now called himself Mr. Veles. When Claire confronted him, he didn't deny it. "Children need structure," he said, smiling. "And I have so many more lessons to teach." Chapter 9: The Final Lesson. Mia vanished. The chalk door was wide open, the wall behind it impossibly hollow, leading into a dark, narrow passage. Claire crawled inside, the air thick with the scent of old chalk dust and something metallic. Deep in the walls, she found a makeshift classroom. Tiny desks bolted to the floor, a blackboard covered in frantic scribbles, and, in the corner, a heap of small bones, still dressed in tattered orphanage uniforms. At the front of the room stood the tall teacher, his back to her, his neck bent at a painful angle to fit under the low ceiling. "You're late," he rasped, his voice like rustling paper. Then he turned, and Claire saw why the rules said not to look at his face. Chapter 10: The New Teacher. Claire escaped with Mia, but the building wouldn't let them leave. Hallways stretched endlessly, doors led back to the same room, and the tall teacher's laughter echoed through the vents. In a final act of desperation, Claire sparked a gas leak and burned the place to the ground. The epilogue shows Mia, now a teenager, teaching an art class. Her students adore her, but they whisper about the chalk door game, how if you draw it just right, it opens. And sometimes, when Mia thinks no one is looking, her shadow stretches too long, its fingers twitching like it's holding a piece of chalk, ready to write on the walls again.